Hello, beautiful, sweet sisters. Here we are on Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021. So I thought it'd be a good idea to go ahead and jump on. I've got a day of coaching ahead, and I didn't want the day to slip away without me jumping on to say hello to everyone. I was woken up in the middle of the night with a thought for today. But before I get there, I had to laugh. Hello, Carol and Kathleen and several of the others. Every once in a while, as you age, you begin to become more comfortable with your wrinkles. And I've always been one of those that say our wrinkles tell stories. And so as I begin to even look at my own face, I'm thinking, okay, so this wrinkle came from 2020. This wrinkle came from 2021. We'll have a sense of humor about where all these wrinkles come from. Hello from Ohio. So good to see you. Sonia, I always enjoy your emoticons. So I wanted to jump on this morning in response to something that someone wrote yesterday. It laid heavy on my heart and it woke me up in the middle of the night, and I said, aha, we need to talk about this. So I always appreciate your comments. I try to read through as many of them as possible. Good morning, Betty. And there was one that stood out yesterday, and so this is what they said. Things are not always as they appear, and you are not immune from being deceived either. It might be a good time to adhere to your own advice. Victims cannot always be able to tell the truth due to no fault of their own. As I noted before, I feel your heart is in the right place, but possibly not your facts. I pray for you and all of us during these deceptive times. Gloria, love the wrinkle talk. There you go. So I appreciated it. Point noted. Every day I wake up and I ask myself, where am I being deceived? And may you please, asking God to please lead me and where I'm bringing light to that. So absolutely right. I do want to take issue with one sentence because I think it's something important. I see lots of hearts this morning. So I want to hone in on the middle sentence because this is something that I've dealt with all year long. Victims cannot always be able to count on to tell the truth due to no fault of their own. All right, so let's talk about this word victim. It has been stunning to me all year. So I, last spring, had victims start coming to me. I didn't ask to see, I didn't seek them out. God started placing them in my lap. I had somebody who I had reached out to someone to say, why are you writing all these blogs about people who had survived sexual abuse? And she goes, you really shouldn't talk to me. You should talk to somebody else. And that's how I started down that path with a woman named Jessie Saboter. Staggering stories. Then from there, other people started to come into my life. Then I had people on this Facebook Live that heard me doing videos as of last March, and they felt safe enough with what I had said to reach out to me. And I even received a call from one of them, and in the first 60 seconds, she let me know that her grandfather had tried to sell her to Epstein when she was a child. And we have since developed a relationship. So all year, I've had these victims, God gently placed them in my hand. And one of the things from the very beginning I learned is it was hard to listen to their stories. And the only reason I found any bit of courage, I see all the hearts, the only reason I found any bit of courage to listen to their stories was because I was so touched by an emerging area of leadership that I saw happening, because in my professional work, I do a lot of work with leadership, but I saw survivor leadership emerging, survivor leadership. And I saw women and men of tremendous, I see all the hearts this morning, thank you so much. Let's send the love to all of us here. I saw both women and men coming out of the woodwork. I've talked with victims from all over the world now. And whenever I share with people uncomfortable news or uncomfortable observations, and they say, where did you get this from? Show me the data. And I'll say, well, I'm working on gathering the data. I've heard this from victims. Every single time, there has not been one exception. Every single time, people are like, well, where did you find these victims? Have you vetted them? Do you know they're true? And I watch how the minute you talk about survivors, there is this undercurrent that victims can't be trusted. And the question I woke up with in the middle of the night was, why? How many victims does it take before we will listen? So I thought back to the things that I've seen just in the past few years. The Nassar case, that was the gymnastics case in the US, where there was a doctor who was finally taken down and serving time now. It took 156 girls to bravely come out and finally make that case happen. Tammy, I feel like you can help where God leads you in your path, absolutely. And so I remember reading the story of Rachel Denhollander. She was one of the lead ones who bravely came out first, and only because she came out, it took one person to be brave enough to come out, and all of a sudden all these other girls came out. And I'll never forget watching her summary for the case, and she said, "How much is a little girl worth?" Talk about haunting words. Rachel Denhollander, you can check out the book that she wrote. And then I thought back to the movie Spotlight. If you haven't seen the movie Spotlight or know anything about it, I would encourage you to check it out. It was a 2015 film based on a story that broke with the Boston Globe in 2002. And what the commonality for that story, that was about the priest in the Boston area who were abusing boys. And they interviewed 30 to 40 victims. People, many of them who had tried to share their stories before, but we did not want to listen. And then the 2015 film, I would encourage you all to watch it, shows what happened. But what it took was a small group of people who were brave enough to simply hear the victims' stories without judgment. Well, then I thought back to the Franklin scandal. So the Franklin boy scandal. This happened in June of 1998, Omaha, Nebraska. It involved Larry King, who just passed recently. That entire scandal involved people at the highest of echelons. But again, the victims paid a great personal price to speak out, and anyone who supported them also paid a great price to speak out. I thought back to the Weinstein case, Rose McGowan, several others that were coming out to speak out about what was happening in Hollywood. It took multiple victims to come out and validate. And then I think back to the Epstein case. So this has just broken in the past few years. I see you all. I'm going somewhere, so hang tight with me. I think back to the Epstein case. A woman named Julie Brown from the Miami Herald, I remember reading an article about her, and I started following her and said, how did you break this case? Many live in denial. You're exactly right, Gloria. And she said, I simply listened to the victims, and the case emerged. For 2 years, this brave woman took great personal sacrifice, not only to listen to the victims, but to track down what had happened to such a degree that there actually was an Epstein case. I bring this up because why is it that we as a society have an innate distrust of the victim? For any of us that have either had to deal with a personal rape of our own, or the rape of a family member, or the abuse of a family member, we all know what it's like to be in that spot, or have had friends or family in that spot, and having conversations with saying, do you really want to take this to the courts? They're going to ostracize the victim. They're going to make the victim look guilty. How many times in our life have we heard victims that nobody wanted to believe, and they ended up being true? So this was laying heavy on my heart last night, because when I read that, victims cannot always be, I think she was saying, counted on to be able to tell the truth through no fault of their own. Now, in one aspect, she's right. Good morning, sweet sister from Louisiana. Hi, Marie. In one aspect, she's right. There are victims who have not been able to do the healing well enough, and they very much still spin in those times and can get things very confused. She's right. And there are many, many victims, both men and women from all over the world, who have done an enormous amount of work to thank you for being their voice. You are welcome, Janine. I think that's what we all have the possibility to do. Hello, beautiful Miss Erica. How many, but there are many, many victims, both men and women, who have done the work Being a victim, they're always on the defensive. They blame things on the victim that wasn't their fault. Very good point, Chrissy. But there are many victims that I found have done an enormous amount of work to get themselves grounded, to figure out how to speak, to be able to voice their story. And that's been one of the most inspiring things I've seen over the past year. And so while it's really easy to get lost on all of the other things that were like, when is justice going to happen? I mean, you saw me yesterday. I was practically a blubbering mess. When is justice going to happen? I have seen this emergence of survivor leadership. And I personally, Kim Faith, am working to usher that in. I am working to usher that in. I have given laptops and printers to survivors that are working on trying to share their story. I have simply, for many of them, simply had Zoom calls and conversations with them. Bonnie, I see you, sweet thing. I know. I have had conversations with them simply to listen to their story. And a few days ago, I talked jokingly about that pink mama moment where my husband didn't see the pink hair because he couldn't see past the shaved head and the judgment stopped us. I'm bringing this conversation up because I wanted to encourage us all. Take a blank piece of paper today and write down the word victim. Go look up what it means and then write your own definition for it. So someday soon, I will be having more of a conversation about how I'm watching the change of things like the Webster Dictionary and other online dictionaries, how it is changing based on the need to influence us. So I'm not asking you to declare it on external. This journey that we're each in is about figuring out how to declare this internally. I want you to write your own. I encourage you to write your own definition. So for me, when I was doing that and I looked at the words victim, I decided to hone in on the preface VIC. And VIC, I see as a pathway to victory. As a pathway to victory. And then ask yourself, when you hear these stories, when you hear stories from people who are either telling us something about a leader or a position, I mean, when you think of all of these stories, what they all have in common is that part of why I think denials are easier than facing the truth. Esther, that's become abundantly clear, hasn't it? The thing that was interesting to me about all of these is that they all have thrown right in our face, I mean, literally right there, we can't see it, and caused us to question people in positions that we were taught that we were supposed to trust. So whether that was a doctor, like the Nassar case, or a priest, like the Spotlight case, the Franklin Boy scandal, what we thought were media. I am a survivor, Cambria. Bless you, dear one. I see you. I see you in all your fullness and your glory. And I encourage you to continue to tell your story. Those success stories, that was the thing that I learned early on. I didn't allow myself, when I was talking about the pink mama moment, I simply suspended judgment. And I simply honored that individual to say, share your story with me, please. Wherever you are, and whatever it is that you feel you want to say to me. And what I was told repeatedly is that I was a safe space for these victims to tell me and share some of the atrocities. I mean, it's hard. Hello from Quebec. Hello, France. We can honor any of those victims to that. And so for all of you, as you look through, I really wanted to encourage us all to take a look at that, because this is what I've heard all year. Well, where did you find these victims? Are you sure they're right? There's this instant denial, this instant impression, because then as I've been listening to the victims first and then looking for data to back up what I'm hearing, or then looking for data that can bridge that gap, as I mentioned yesterday, between what their story is and what the average everyday person can handle. And we don't have to validate someone's experience by simply hearing it. Have we lost all compassion in that way? And so I offer this to you because we've seen this play out in our life so many times. I think back even to the Clinton scandal. I did not have sex with that woman. Well, we all know how that one ended. How many times have we heard victims? Good morning from Seattle. Hello, Diane. Kathleen, it's not up to us to judge those affected. Absolutely. But what I do believe is this phrase that I am in the room to heal the room. I am in the room to heal the room. That came from a wonderful sister out of Ohio that I keep encouraging to speak out and do more with what she brings to the table. And so I offer you, as you dive into all of these things, become comfortable with what is your own perception of this word victim. Because as you look through the patterns, part of why this societal belief system for us not to believe victims is partly to save their ass. I'm going to say it like it is. When we go back and we look at the story of what the struggles of all of these victims went through, the commonalities is you needed brave people to come out and speak of their story. You saw how many people tried to stop them from speaking out. We've seen this many times in my lifetime. Can't deny it. Absolutely right, Sharon. We see that the only way those stories come to light is because more and more and more people bravely come out. And so when we think about the power of one voice, wow. When we think about the power of survivor leadership, wow. That's what's inspiring me here today. So I wanted to jump on and just offer us that. May we all figure out why we have been taught to disbelieve victims. And may we all bravely look in the mirror and have done the work and say, am I brave enough to simply listen? Because it's not easy, sweet sisters. I'm not going to lie to you. Sharon, absolutely so right. I'm tired of it. It's time for us to have compassion and stop these people from lying. I'm with you, Sharon. I am absolutely with you. And I gather that the women and men that are on this channel, you are also trying to find your way with these things as well. And so this one, I don't mind people disagreeing with me. And if any of you ever have information you want to share with me, or you say, Kim, I think you might have seen this particular point off, please email me, Kim@KimberlyFaith. I am seeking the truth as much as you are. And what I'm certainly finding is that the truth can appear multifaceted. What I'm certainly finding is that it's an evolving story. And so every single day I wake up to learn what's next. But this issue of the victim, it is something I have been dealing with almost every single week for a year now. Every single week. How quickly people are like, well, where did you find them? Where did you find them? We believe victims when their story matches what we're told to believe. But when their story doesn't match what we've been told to believe, then all of a sudden there's doubt. Well, if people were living through this, we would already know about it. Well, when you really start researching these things, you find out how many. Nothing is worse than not being believed and having to feel victimized. Lisa, that statement. Nothing is worse than not being believed and having to feel victimized when those who abuse us are still out there. That lays heavy on my heart, Lisa, and I'm beginning to realize that. It was last March when I was given a name of someone to speak with, and I talked with her first before I did a podcast interview with her. And I said, how many times have you tried to share your story? She says, Kim, I've been trying to share my story about this ritual abuse and about the horrific things that I've seen my whole life. She said, I have people that don't want to believe me everywhere. I've had people in churches where I share with them how I came to God and how that love for God is what made me victorious. I have shared that story and then I see them shun me. Mary, I'm sorry that your daughter experienced that. We've all been there. And what she said to me, she said, and Kim, if it isn't people disbelieving me, I've had to live through watching people that I've told when I was a child, because the code of silence was so big in this group that I was in, that I've watched people that I've told be killed. It's always a risk when I tell my story, she said. And so imagine how I felt at that moment. And that was a reckoning for me to say, how brave am I going to be? How important is it? And when I knew she shared the passion that I did to be sure that we fought for the children, for me it was worth the risk. And I think of all the people, all of the whistleblowers that have lost their life to speak out. I think of all the victims that are speaking out on so many more victims that are no longer with us. And then I think about how each one of us have within our power to listen. So, Sharon, I'm trying to read you here. So I want to say that there's a lot of victims out there and they're being found, yes. But don't, okay. So be sure to read her comment as it's scrolling up here. So absolutely, she's mentioning how we're going to have a lot of discernment. So I come on here today to simply encourage you. Until you've been in someone's shoes, you can't really feel, we can't really understand, but we can feel someone's heart. Absolutely, Tammy. And so I encourage you to wrestle with the fact of what is it that we each innately believe about victims. Because this kind of comment, we can't really believe victims. They don't always tell the truth. Maybe a handful. But what I'm finding is that a lot of them tell the truth. We simply haven't wanted to listen for a very, very, very long time. Because it didn't match up with what we believed. It was uncomfortable for us to believe that priests could have been guilty. It was uncomfortable for us to believe that doctors and physicians could be involved with this. It was uncomfortable for us to believe that people in high positions of power could be this. And so many of them were the abusers also abused. What I'm finding is in many cases, yes. So I come to you, sweet sisters, with no answers today. But I come to you with an awareness that we as a society have a fundamental bias against victims. And it has become very aware to me, it become very obvious to me that this bias we have against victims, both men and women, people from all over the world, this bias we have against victims is part of why these horrific things have gone on for so long. So may we all wrestle with what we really believe about victims. May we write down on that piece of paper that I'm encouraging you to write, may we write down and face what those belief systems are that we have. Have we been taught not to believe them? Are we scared to believe them? Because if we do believe them, it means that we have to question other things and we're not in the mood. So I'm not here to make us all sad today. What I'm here is to encourage us to be brave and understand how society has programmed us to disbelieve these systems. And that in this world that we have, the complexity that we're all working to unravel, I also know that on the other side of this word complexity is the word complicity. Complicity meaning that each one of us are somehow allowing this to happen, consciously or unconsciously. And what I'm excited about here today is that we can stop it. Even if it is simply each one of us listening more to a victim. Even if it is us going to Amazon and looking up ritual satanic abuse and reading the books, sexual abuse, reading the books, volunteering with a local hotline and reading the books. Karen, I've been taught not to see it, to look the other way. And how many of us, Karen, have been taught that? We've been taught that these things are evil, and if we look at evil, it will jump on us. Well, our faith is stronger than that. I've been looking in the face of evil all year, and I have not caught it. Is it possible that evil is the virus? Is it possible? And as I look at how family members deal with us when we do take time to look at hearing the stories of the victims, of listening to the women and men who have seen these atrocities, I couldn't help but jokingly say to myself, well, who needs the enemy when we've got family and friends that want to give us a smack every day? What do we do? What do we do? And so I come here today, if we believe these victims, maybe we're afraid we'll have to do something. Ah, Kathy, isn't that a nugget? Isn't that a nugget of honesty? And so I ask all of us to simply open our hearts to what it is we're being asked to be taught. We each have a piece in dismantling what hasn't been right or true. And will we find people that sometimes are not grounded and have either twisted the truth on purpose? Yes, I believe that's a small percentage. Have they twisted the truth because they're not able to process the information? I do believe that's also possible. Also possible. Mary, I'm glad you saw that. Anybody else who sees there's a lot of victims coming out now, and what we are watching is the emergence of survivor leadership. And for any of you for any of you dear ones that have been there yourself, I want you to know that you're not alone. I know these are difficult times. I want to encourage you to share your story. If you've never given it voice, I encourage you to write it down. If you've never given it voice, I encourage you to even reach out to me, reach out to a friend. Sometimes it's easier to tell someone you don't know than it is someone you do. I believe in us, sweet sisters. So that was what I was woken up with there in the middle of the night. I do know the virus is real, Barbara, and I also know there is another virus that's eating away at humanity. Absolutely. Barbara, I'm not denying the virus is real. It is real. And there's a lot more going on. And may we all find a way to bring healing physically to all of us, to everyone who is at the point of concern about the virus. May we all find that physical healing. I look forward to a time when we are all physically healed and have new healing modalities come out. And I look forward to the fact of when we are emotionally healed as a society, and when we are spiritually healed. So yes, may we all move away from it's either this or that to the fact that yes, it is real and these things are real. There's a lot for us to dismantle. So find yourself a piece of paper. Have a relationship with that word victim today. Have a relationship with that word victim today and find what treasure you can find. Because if I do it and you do it and Debbie does it, and Christina does it, and Mary does it, and Diana does it. Imagine how much love and how much healing can be released in the world. We've got this, sweet sister. I don't know how or when, but I do know that the power lies within each of us to make sure that we can create a better world. Know that you are all dearly loved. We are more powerful than victimhood. We are more powerful than we can possibly imagine. That's my words to all of us today. Sending you all much love, much light. Keep sending me the emails so that we can have a conversation together. Take care, everyone. Love you.